Hello, welcome to Cable Plus Property, the #1 online educative platform on all issues related to land and landed properties. At Cable Plus Property, our aim is to ensure that Nigerians and non-Nigerians have at the tip of their finger all information related to land acquisition, land procurement, planning, documentation, and registration of land and landed properties. We provide you with all that you need to know about getting your property registered and obtaining your planning permits. In this video, I'll be speaking with a veteran in the built environment, Planner Waheed Kadiri. Development control activities in the past were not as difficult as it is now, even though people were not so educated then. Why does it seem like things have become more difficult and people find it difficult to adhere strictly to planning regulations? Why is that?
Well, there's a reason. In those days that we are talking about, how many developments were coming up per month in a defined area? There was lesser number of developments. Therefore, the planning personnel were adequate. Let me the number. Though we've always found that planners, we never have enough planners. But in those days, they were not as stretched as we have now. And the extent of development being controlled was not as wide as it is now. You can imagine in those days, if you were in Abeokuta, the extent of development is still within almost just the core area. But now if you are in Abeokuta, development has extended to Obadaoko, Odeda, almost as far as Kobakwe and all that. Therefore, development points are becoming more remote to the control points. And of course, we should not take away the fact that facilities available are not going in tandem with the demand of the development rate. And of course, we are becoming also more aware of the danger of non-compliance. In the last 20 years, there have been a lot of collapse, and that had made all of us aware of the fact of being compliant with planning permission.
The aspect of planning which most developers detest is the enforcement of the planning law. What measures do you think that government can put in place to ensure that developers apply and abide by the content of the planning permit?
It's only in this country that you talk of that. In other places, private sector developers see the planning agencies as those they should relate to, because everything is based on legality. But here, when people even come with applications for approval for 6 units, they go back and develop 10 units, 12 units. I think it's all, with due respect to some of the developers, it's all about our quick money syndrome. We want to make money as fast as we can. And also because some of us think we have immunity, that nobody can do anything to me. And that leads to impunity. They think they are immune to regulations and all that. And therefore, seeing the man in the planning agency as just that man, not bothering about the responsibility he has. How can you tell me, are you this boy? Do you know me? All that. But once our planning officials are on the right side of the law, you will damn the consequence. You don't care who that person is. But that person sees you as that small boy and say you can take things over your head. I think that's the greatest challenge. And what do I mean by that? The political will should also be there. Everybody praises El-Rufai for what he did in Abuja, in correcting the master plan for Abuja, demolishing houses and enforcing regulation. But Rufai was able to do it because Obasanjo gave him the support and said, go on, I'm here for you. If the president can tell that to a minister, if the governor can tell a commissioner, do it, I will take responsibility. And the commissioner tells his director of planning, go and do it, I will take responsibility. The director will be able to tell his supporting staff, do it. If anything comes, we take it to the commissioner. And I'm sure the commissioner will take it to the governor. They feel relaxed. If you can recall, the first building that was demolished, if I'm right, by El-Rufai in Abuja then, was the building owned by, I think, Colonel Ali, who was then the chairman of the ruling political party. So if he was able to do that, who are you to say I'm chairman PDP Ward 12, when the building of the national president was brought down? So all I'm saying is that apart from the need to take a look at our legislation, we still need the political support of those in government.
Sir, kindly explain the meaning of land acquisition and land ratification.
By our law, there's nothing like land acquisition again in this country. Land acquisition was pre-1977, 77, when the Land Use Act came into being. 78, right? 78. That's when the land acquisition law was in place. But since then, what we have now is revocation of right of occupancy. Because the Land Use Act assumes that everybody has the right of occupancy. And the governor had been given the right to revoke that right for public use. So what we have now is revocation, but we still call it acquisition because it's the same thing as government wanting to use it. That's what acquisition was for. Acquisition was about acquiring from the owners for the use of government. That's acquisition. But now revocation of right of occupancy is about saying, as the governor, I know you have the right of occupancy to that space, but the government needs it for an overriding public use. Therefore, I'm taking away that right from you. That's why it's called revocation. The other side.
Ratification.
Ratification. Ratification is about when a land had been acquired or right of occupancy revoked and nothing was done with that land and the owner still wants to use the land. Then you go back to government and say, can you please give me permission to use my land in spite of the fact that you have revoked it? That's my understanding.
Why?
But that is brought about by the fact that land or spaces are acquired by government beyond the need they have for it. And I've been advocating it for some time, and I've still continued to advocate for it that if government revokes the right to a property, and if it does not utilize that land within 2 years for the purpose for which it was taken from the owner, it should revert back to the owner. I'm basing that on the principle that even when you get planning approval, one of the conditions is that if you don't develop within 2 years, you still have to go back for confirmation, still reconfirmation or whatever. That is, the approval will have lapsed after 2 years. Why can't the revocation, why can't it also lapse? Let's say maybe not 2 years, maybe 3 years, but let's be specific. That would push government to two things. One, they'll be careful about what they say they want to use the land for. And they will not be flippant in their acquisitive tendencies. Because we've seen in this country that some acquisitions were punitive, some were political. But if you revoke right for political reasons, and you say you are going to use it for this particular overriding public use, which does not really exist, and if you don't do that, I think after a period, we have to have a rethink.
So, sir, how can the interest of property owners be protected after the government has acquired the land?
I think it's even before the revocation. The law has given protection to the landowner in two ways. If you revoke the right of occupancy of a property, two things you can do as the governor. You can either pay compensation, but that is very limiting because compensation, according to the Land Use Act, is on the improvement on the land, not on the land value. Right? That's the difference between the Land Use Act and the Acquisition Law. The Acquisition Law says you pay compensation based on the market value, I think 2 years before the acquisition. And that is done because people don't go on to inflate the value. But the Land Use Act says it's only on improvement on the land. When you say improvement, what development have been brought up? Are there properties on it? But people argue to the point that even if you don't have the property, if you have the intention and you've expended some money on that intention, which is provable, for example, if you can show me that you have an approved plan, though you've not started development, you have an approved plan, and you can tell me how much you have expended in getting that, you are likely to get compensated for it. It's one side of the argument. But the other side of the compensation is that the Land Use Act also provides for resettlement when you revoke the right of occupancy of a defined area. But that also has its implications, because if you are resettling me, you are not resettling me in the air. You are resettling me on somebody's land. What happens to that somebody? It's like it's a never-ending thing. But most people tend to go for the monetary compensation. Why? Because let's take for example, and we have examples of that. Let's take for example, if you are resettling people from Area A that is dominated by Tribe A, right? And you're resettling them in Area B, dominated by Tribe B, or with characteristics B. How do you want them to live in harmony? That's part of the problem, which I think why the resettlement thing had not been very popular.
As we conclude, sir, what is your general advice to members of the public concerning town planning as a profession?
Like they say about police, we are their friends. But the side of town planning most people know is the combative, if I can use the word, or the police side, this X that we go and put. Whereas things had not been like that, and town planning was in existence. And of course, my advice will also be, even to government, if you give people responsibility to chase after contravening developments, give this set of people the support they need. It's not like somebody goes to a site and is waylaid and is injured and is left to take care of himself. Can we, those who are so publicly exposed, can we have insurance policies for them? Can government take over responsibility for whatever they have to do after being assaulted? And of course, like I said earlier, we need the government's political will to see that planning is good for us. And that takes us to the fact that government should not see planning as a revenue generation arm of government. Because most of the time, you want to develop and government waits for you at that point to say, have you paid your tax? Some will even rate the tax accruable to you based on the proposal you are bringing. But proposals are intention. Am I right? Proposals are intention. I have this plot of land. I intend to put 6 blocks of flats. Does not mean I have the money now. I may need the government approval to seek for funds for it. And you are telling me, go and bring the money that you don't have because you want to have. No. Government should also think about that.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Cable Plus Property. As well, like our Facebook page at Cable Plus Property, and also make sure you follow us on Instagram at Cable Plus Property. My name is Oiza. Thank you for watching, and this is Cable Plus Property.